friends. I just got off of doing a transition talk here in Berkeley Springs, which is one of our monthly series talks that we do. And every once in a while, instead of having somebody from the outside come in, I take a shot at it. And that's what I did this last Saturday. 4 hours long. I haven't done one of those that long for a long time. And so it kind of whipped me physically. But it was a very interesting kind of effort, if I say so myself, to build a big kind of picture, a big scenario, if you will, of one major kind of possibility and track going forward. It's available at arlingtoninstitute.org. So if you'd like to see it, I'd suggest you take a look at it. But we looked at what was going on cosmologically, cosmically, what's happening in the stars and the center of the galaxy and the energy from the sun and all those kinds of things. And folded it in with information about what different extraterrestrial groups are saying has happened in the past and what is happening now and what's likely on our near horizon. They're talking about the possibility of a solar flare of one sort or another. And then we spent some time talking about what you can do about this and what we should do about it, and so to prepare. And one of the last slides in the sequence was essentially one that said, but none of this may happen. It was kind of I characterized it as a get out of jail card for this whole business of trying to anticipate futures, because you never know for sure what's likely, what's you know what's kind of possible. You don't know what's really likely because in this case, in particular, you're flying into space that no one has ever been before, and there's multiple kind of tracks or headings that you could take into this space, and each one of them would, if that turns out to be what really happens, each one of them would be a dramatically different kind of future. And so we spent 4 hours building one future, and people really liked it. So then I went on and started reading some other books. And as typically happens, I have a lot of books, and they're in piles on my floor. And, you know, when I'm ready to go to another one, I just stop and look at the pile, and there is some title that kind of looks particularly interesting. And so I pull it out, and that becomes kind of the next book that I read. Well, when I did that, so on Sunday, I pulled up this book. Yuga's Shift. Turns out to be, he's a technologist working at very high levels in India, and is got a master's or a PhD maybe in computer science and so on. And so he's a smart guy. But off on the side, what he started to do is to research, to try to understand, you know, in big, broad terms, what was going on here. He talks in the foreword how that he was confronted in a certain situation, and he was kind of frustrated by the lack of kind of big context to explain kind of what's happening to us all right now, and stumbled into this whole business of yugas. And has now spent a number of years building this book, and it is big and it is profound and it is really impressive. And his kind of basic idea, and I alluded to yugas in my talk on Saturday. Yugas are this idea that came out of the ancient Hindu literature that suggested that humanity, life on this planet, goes through 4 basic stages. And each one of those stages is about 12,000 years long, and they're called yugas. And each one of them has a significantly different character. And they go from high levels of spirituality with the amazing kind of capabilities to manipulate whatever in this sphere, manifestation and all these kind of things. There's no manufacturing because they can manufacture anything, produce anything that they want. No wars. No governments to speak of. Everybody is highly kind of spiritual and religious. There's a single kind of global approach to the kind of theological or religious kind of ideas. And it's really quite a wonderful place. And then what happens is it's sequentially goes through 3 other yugas, 3 other stages of disintegration or degradation. The next yuga is still pretty nice, but now they start to get government and they start to get some other kind of things. The 3rd yuga, it's really they're starting to have wars and things like that. And the 4th yuga, which is called the Kali Yuga, Kali, is the one that we're in. And it is the most dysfunctional one that there is. This is the one where everybody fights each other and they do crazy stuff, and it's kind of irrational. And it's if you look around, how many times have you said, why do people kill themselves all the time like this? I mean, what's the logic? That doesn't even make sense. I've always thought that this idea of wars between countries was irrational. I mean, we don't allow that. The way we solve problems within our family is to kill somebody that you disagree with. You can't do it in a educational or a business context. I mean, you can't go killing somebody you don't like. No. And but when you get up to the size of a government, then suddenly all the rules are off, and the government says it's legal for them to go out and just kill people by the millions. And it's just crazy. And you say, what world? And some of us have spent some time poking around in terms of the ideas of archons and jinn and these different kinds of entities, other dimensional, trans-dimensional entities that literally live off of that kind of negative energy. And, and you can build one part of the logic for why it all is dysfunctional and good and significant parts of this planet based on that these guys need dysfunctionality and pain and fear and so on because it feeds them. Yeah, but then why now? And what's this about? And what's the bigger deal? Well, these ideas about yugas say that is the nature of the times. And it's the nature of the times for scientific reasons, literally scientific reasons. And there's all, turns out, which I didn't know until I read this book, that the kind of the basic idea that the animating aspect of this Yuga thing suggests that there is a second sun that is coupled to our sun, and it is invisible because it's a brown dwarf, but it behaves and has a relationship which is common to almost every other star that astronomers can see. And that is that these two very large objects, they swing by each other and go out to the extremity, and then they come back. And so they accelerate very quickly, headed toward the middle, and then they swing back by each other, and then they decelerate going out to the extremity and turn around and do the whole thing. And the whole big sequence is not a long time. So there is a different character out at the extremities where everything is really far apart. And yet you got to think about the fact that this is a dynamic situation and it's speeding up and slowing down, speeding up and slowing down. And there are reasons to believe that physics literally changes with the velocity of our solar system as it heads toward accelerates towards the brown dwarfs, and as it decelerates going out. And what that turns into, among other things, is all of this social. It has social kind of system overtones. And the way humans behave and how their outlook is and their perspective and all of this is all a function of essentially velocity, if you will, and perhaps even the adjacency or the closeness to this other brown dwarf. I don't know, exactly. But there is a kind of an engine. This is an engine that describes whole lots of things that are essentially predictable. So what they say is that the Hindus say that we are just passing out. As a matter of fact, next year is supposed to be kind of the end of the Kali Yuga, where we've had all these wars and things, and that this period of the Kali Yuga has been 3, 4, or 500 years or something like that. It's all of kind of history for the most part, as we know, certainly in terms of Western civilizations. But as I say, it's getting to the end of this thing, and it is about to turn, or it has already turned, and it's starting to accelerate going out. Or it's really kind of fascinating because when somebody like Cryon comes to my town and says, well, it's not going to be 1,000 years apiece. It's going to be 12,000 years apiece. I said, oh, that's better. 12 is better than 1. But I had no idea what, the underlying context was. This gives some context or some degree of explanation about what's going on. But what this guy has done in this book is really fascinating, because what he has done is he has done his homework. And what he has found out is that there are all of these indigenous groups that have this ancient oral history that they've passed on that all say the same thing from their own point of view. The Aztecs talked about it. The Hopi talk about it. Aborigines in Australia talk about it. There's something like 8 different groups, all who have clear, kind of say 4 cycles, and they change for going from one place to another. They say it in their own words, but they all tell you, here it comes. They look downstream and they're pointing at what's inbound. It's interesting because they all imply that there is a large catalytic event. You tease off the next era, the next Yuga. And that this has always been the case. The Hopi, for instance, they have a history where they talk about how this they were all carrying on and doing okay, and their big god kind of figure came down and told them something big is coming, and you got to get out of the way. And he introduces them to the ant people who live underground, and so they send them down under the ground, and they live underground with the ant people for an extended period of time. And the ant people have all kind of interestingly advanced technologies that are a derivative of natural capabilities. They get light from things like crystals and gems that they put on the wall, and they emit light, and that's how they get light. There's just all kinds of things like that. And then as it turns out, there's horrible stuff that happens on the fire and brimstone and whatever on the surface of the earth. And after a while, the God guy comes down and says, "Come on out, you can go out." And so then they start all over again, and they run their society all up for, 12,000 years or whatever the number is. And then he shows up again and he says, wait a second, come on, you got to go down to the ant people again and live underground, because there's another big catastrophic thing that's coming, and it's going to wipe the place out. And so they do it again. And so they've done that a couple of times, and in their petroglyphs and other kind of writings or imagery, they have pictures of this thing. Now, the ants are not ants per se. I think they live underground like ants live underground, and so that's where they come from. Well, there are similar stories like this from all these guys, and if you take that and you allow the possibility that it is really quite accurately descriptive of kind of the large cycles about how things go and what's going on, then you've got now another scenario, a whole new scenaric track that goes out into this future in the next couple of years. Instead of having one that's being described to you by extraterrestrials who've got all these reasons because of wars and space and other such things for why we live the way we live and what's likely to happen. Now you've got one that essentially says that there are these big giant cycles. If it continues to the way it is, has been, in the future what's going to happen. Well, it's so that is to say, there will be a big catalytic event of one sort or another that is going to apparently wipe out a goodly portion of the population on the planet. And then the good guys, I mean, they talk, the Hopis and others, and the Hindus talk about the people of good hearts who are saved. And it sounds almost biblical to me a little bit. I'm remembering some of the stories about the Bible stories about how this is supposed to happen. Well, this is really intriguing, because from a kind of an academic or technical or intellectual point of view, what you get is some interesting concordance you get some interesting kind of overlays in this, because if you lay out the scenario that I built on this last Saturday, where the aliens give you all of their reasons. One group of aliens, at least. I mean, I don't know what others say, but this is what supposedly, reportedly, these guys say. And if you take them, then there's some interesting kind of overlays. You get some commonality that comes out of this. Big events that are going to happen sometime really soon. Some level of kind of selection that goes on. I mean, on the one side with the group that I talked about, they have a thing called harvesting, and the people who's kind of in the right place and their hearts are right. I guess what I would take away from this is that, and I've suggested this a number of times in other places, including last Saturday, is that this whole period in the coming years could be far stranger than anything that we really know, are familiar with, and are ready for in kind of conventional terms. This is a big cosmic end of the end of age kind of things that we're up against, and this is not, no matter how you look at it, if you try to look at this in a kind of reasonable, comprehensive, objective kind of way, and no matter how you look at it, this is pretty galvanizing. This is really attention getting, and I am impressed that at the center of all of these two, at least, and I'm going to go look around and find some more, but at the center of these two, at least these two scenarios, it's all about who you are and how your heart is and your sense of your consciousness and these kinds of things that we all know about and that we all work on. But it's a degree of kind of importance that I'm running into more and more of these kind of seemingly coincidental explanations, all of which who say you have got to be somebody different to effectively to transit this space and to be a player out of the back end. All of them suggest that out of the back end of this thing is something really quite amazing and wonderful. They all have kind of life extension, and sort of as it turns out, as you go through these yugas, you start with really long, apparently multi-hundred at least year lives, and as you move yourself toward the Kali Yuga, they get shorter, and you become shorter in stature as well. So anyway, it's really quite fascinating, and I will continue to talk to you a little bit about what I find out in this Yuga Shift book, because I believe that, as I've suggested before, that this is a game that is designed to be won, that we are in the middle of a game, if you will. In the case of these extraterrestrials that I talked about last week, they literally talk about the game masters, that there are these entities, these spiritual, large, very powerful entities who are the kind of the controllers of this space. And they call them the game masters because it's kind of like a game, and there's all these rules, and it's a, there's the playing space that we live on, and that we have to that we're constrained by. And but if you think of it as kind of a game kind of situation, I mean, there's a new scientific paper that just came out yesterday that some guys came to the conclusion that the universe is going to get reset. That there is this we're heading toward a reset of the universe. Well, that's a variation of the scenario that says that we all live in an AI in some kind of simulation, and that it expands and contracts and it resets. So there are a variety of kind of uh, kind of framework scenarios that they all they're all talking about the space ahead being very discontinuous, and that there will be a natural kind of division that happens in the process, and that those of us who qualify are going to end up on the way to a new world, and certainly a new human in the process. So, which is why here at the Arlington Institute we're working hard to try to make sense out of some of this and provide some help on the way. So we'll talk about some more of this later. So thanks.